All right, next one is Becca. Let's go.
I really hope the lighting and the sound is good. I'm filming in a new location, as you can see, so let me know if everything is good. But today I really wanted to do a sit down video. I feel like it's been so long since I've done one, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what I have learned over the past year, I guess. My first book, my debut novel, is coming out in March, which is insane. It's like 2 months away, which is just, oh, it's crazy to think that it's actually going to be out there in the world and that people are going to be able to read it. Like, that's terrifying to me. But I thought it would be a really good opportunity for me to chat a little bit about everything I have learned when writing my debut novel, and also like preparing for the publication, because I feel like I've learned a lot in the last year. So before we jump in, please do hit that subscribe button if you're interested in publishing and following my publishing journey. And please do pre-order my book. The Girl Beyond the Gate is available for pre-order in both ebook and audiobook, and I will link those down below. So the first thing I learned while writing my first novel is that actually the first novel you write may not be your debut. This was a really hard thing for me to learn. I basically wrote a novel a few years ago now, which will never see the light of day. I did actually get it to beta reader stage, so I sent it out to a few people, got some actually really good feedback, and started editing it before I decided that it was not the book that I wanted to be my debut. I wouldn't be proud to put it out into the world. So I put it in a drawer, and it will stay in that drawer forevermore. But when I was first writing that book, I had it in my head that if this book doesn't get published, I'm gonna give up. Because it was such a monumental thing for me to do, to actually write a full-length novel. I was like, I cannot put all of that effort in just for it to fail. Like, that was just my mindset, and I really encourage you not to have that mindset. If you're writing your first novel, do not have that mindset, because the thing is, it may not be your debut, and it may be that it doesn't get picked up, or it may be that you decide, like I did, not even to query it because it's just not good enough. But it doesn't mean that it's wasted work. I am so glad that I wrote that novel, and I will be forever grateful to that novel, and I will keep it in that drawer as a little memento, and I'm sure I'll look back and read it at some point and cringe a little bit. But I'm so glad that I wrote it, because it taught me how to write a novel. It taught me all about pacing. It taught me all about, you know, how to build up a story and make it into a full-length novel. It taught me about character development. And, you know, you can learn about all these things by writing short stories and things like that, but until you've actually sat down to write a full-length novel, I don't think you can possibly get that experience. It is very different writing a short story to a full-length novel. It's a completely different practice to make sure that the story you're telling is actually worthy of that amount of words. So yeah, I feel like everyone needs to get a bit of a bum novel out the way first before they can write a really good novel. And I mean, every novel you write is going to be better than the last, or it should be. You should constantly be growing. So yeah, I feel like if you're writing your first novel, like, obviously make it the best you can make it, and hopefully it will get picked up, hopefully it will get you a book deal. But if it doesn't, it's not wasted work. You will have grown, you will have learned, and it will make you a better writer for the next one. Okay, the second thing I learned is that to write a book, you just need to be disciplined enough to write it. I get asked a lot about like how to write a novel and how to actually get to that finish line of typing the end. Honestly, I don't think there's any secret formula. Lots of people do lots of different things. Some people plot, some people just make it up as they go along. You know, everyone sort of discovers their own way of writing, but the main thing that you need to do if you're planning on writing a novel and finishing a novel is to be disciplined. It's really easy to sit back and think, I don't feel like writing today. Yep. Like, it's so easy to do that. I still do that. I'm writing my second novel, or my third novel, but my second novel that's going to be published. But the difference between someone who's writing for fun and someone who writes as a career is discipline. That is the key to finishing your novel, is to say, you know what, I don't feel...
Yes. Work will always push back no matter what your work is. you'll always have some day where you wish you didn't have to go to work. And that doesn't change when you're writing. You're going to say to yourself, man, I don't want to write today. And the thing is, too, is that that's not one of those things where I'm saying, like, never take a break. Definitely take your breaks. You know, when you sit down to write, get up, go for, you know, a 15, 20-minute walk, come back, you know, go for your lunch, that kind of stuff. Take your breaks during your day. You know, have your day off throughout the week, whatever day or days that you need to have off, take those days off. But at some point, you need to sit your butt in a chair, and you need to put your fingers to the keyboard, and you got to type, and you got to make words. And if you don't, then it's never going to get done. And coming to that understanding earlier on is going to help you. The sooner that you get to that, that you come to terms and you come to grip with that fact that you're not always going to want to write, the better for you.
Like writing today, but I'm going to make myself write, even if it's just a few words, just to get something out onto the paper, even if you don't end up using it, even if you throw the scene away afterwards because it's just awful, at least you've sat down, you've put your bum in the chair, and you've typed some words, and eventually that will turn into writing a novel. And
I've heard the argument against this where it's like, yeah, but usually when I write that, you know, it's like not usable, and like it was a waste of my time anyways. It's like sometimes true, you could sit down and you could write and it turns out to be nothing, and it turns out to be, you know, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, whatever words that are not going to go into your book. And that's a lot of words. I mean, obviously, like 5,000 words in a single day would be a lot of words that you're not going to use. That would suck. You probably wouldn't really reach 5,000 words in a day if you were that down. But I would say on those days where I don't want to write, and then I sit down, I force myself to sit down, I start writing, I would say it's probably like 8 or 9 times out of 10 I get good stuff. It's very few that I don't get anything of value, right? Sometimes it turns out where it's just kind of like, you know what? The scene I wrote, the dialogue I wrote, I don't like it, but I like the concept. I like this drama that's happening here. So I'm gonna rewrite it. I'm gonna put them in a different location, and I'm gonna rewrite their argument or whatever. I like this. Sometimes it's just that, right? I got the fundamental of a scene is really what I end up getting. But other times I just fall into the flow state and I start writing like normal, and I get good quality content out of it. So there's plenty of times where you're not going to want to write, and you're not going to want to write until you've been writing for an hour. You just have to force yourself past that first 15, 30, 60 minutes, whatever it might be, however long that hump is. That you have to just get past that, and then the rest of your day will be like any other day. But you'll never get there until you write for that amount of time.
You know, you can write 500 words a day, and that will be enough.
And sometimes too, I'll also write a different. I'll say, you know what? I really don't feel like writing this right now. I'm gonna go write a different story. I'm gonna write notes. I'm gonna write whatever on that. And then after I've kind of gotten over the hump with that story, I go back to my main story and I continue writing there. That's also a way of doing it.
Novel eventually. On that note, I'm moving on to number 3, which is that you do not have to write every day. This is probably quite controversial. A lot of people do say that you have to write every day, but I don't think you do. I don't, and I've got a 2-book deal, so you know. Some days you do not feel like writing. Some days you can't write. Some days, you know, there's too much going on. I have an 8-week-old baby. Some days it is physically impossible for me to write. But the key is, like I said, discipline. It's making sure that you don't just stop. You do eventually pick it back up and you keep going. And it's finding what works for you. I tend to try to write each day. Like, I always start the day thinking I would like to get some words down today. It doesn't always happen, but that's fine. It works for me. As long as I'm meeting my deadline, I'm good. Okay, the fourth thing that I've learned is that you will edit your novel so many times. Like, you will read it and edit it to the point where you get so bored of the story and you'll still miss things. I've literally just handed in my proof edits, which is, so I did a round of edits on my own when I first wrote the book. I then did a round of edits with my critique partner, mentor. Then I did a round of edits with my agent. Then, in fact, I think I did 2 rounds of edits with my agent. Then I did a round of structural edits with my editor. I did a round of copy edits with my editor. And then I've just done my proofread with my editor. So is that 7 or 8 rounds of edits? And during the proofread, I still picked up on things that I'd missed. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but that's not even just you missing it. That's other people missing it too. Or, you know, sometimes it's, especially with a developmental edit, you might be changing things out completely. So now you've got new stuff in there that no one else had a chance to actually notice and point out to you. So, but yeah, that's very true. You're going to have to edit your book.
So if you are one of those people who sits down and goes, I finished the book, I don't need to edit it, I think it's great, I'm going to send it straight off to agents, just no. There will always be something you've missed, and at the end of the day, if you can't bring yourself to edit your novel, you are not cut out for this industry, because I swear I've done more editing than I have writing since I signed my book deal. Okay.
Yeah, like I won't even let my wife read my novels until I've gone through at least one edit. Usually just because, you know, as I'm writing, a lot of the times I don't stop to do spell checks. I also don't stop to perfect wording as well. So a lot of times I'll go back and I'll notice that, you know, besides spelling mistakes, I'll notice that like just the sentence was worded kind of oddly, or that dialogue wasn't strong, really, that kind of stuff. And I just have to rewrite it to make it, you know, better. So yeah, I don't let anyone see my work until I've at least edited it once, and that's only a very few people who even see it at that point.
The fifth thing I have learnt is that comparison is the thief of joy. Lots of people have said this to me before, and until I actually got to where I am today, I didn't really grasp what that meant properly. But it is so true. If you are constantly comparing yourself to other authors, it's just gonna drag you down and steal your joy. There is always gonna be someone who is doing it better than you. There's always gonna be someone who's, you know, hit the bestseller list and they've got a fancy hardback with sprayed edges, and you know, they're on the tables in Waterstones or whatever it is that you're looking at these other authors and going, oh, how come I haven't got that? There is just no point. There is absolutely no point.
Further along in the career, and it is extremely difficult as you get older, and the people who are basically getting into the industry in a way it's like before you. I mean, like for me, I've only technically, as far as published works, I only have ghost novels that are published, right? So these other authors who are, some of them are like 10 years younger than me, right? It does feel like, man, you know, like I wish I was where they are when I was their age. But, you know, I started writing seriously when I was like 20, 21, 22, somewhere in that range. Beyond just note taking, like I was doing notes for like the world building of my world at the time. Before that, writing stage scripts as well. I mean, I guess writing stage scripts is technically real writing, but I wasn't writing for like a novel writing. But some of these other people are like, I've been writing since I was 8 years old or something like that, right? You know, that was like their dream as a kid. So they become a published author at the age of like 20, 25, whatever. So, you know, their story is not my story, and their journey is not my journey. So it's one of those things where on the surface, it's like, man, they're so lucky. I wish I was as lucky as they are to get a book deal as quickly as they got it, you know. But, you know, really, they've probably been writing longer than I have in a way, you know. So it's one thing, that's one way to kind of keep your mind in the right spot about it, is that you know, no two journeys are the same.
I don't believe that any of that stuff actually signals talent. Like, maybe that's just me saying it because I haven't got any of that stuff. I mean, obviously you've got to be a really good writer to get all of that stuff, but I feel like a lot of the time it's just based on timing.
Sadly, we have seen writers who are not good at writing get everything. So we know very much that it does not require you to be a good writer to get those things. Yeah.
And what the industry is.
That's not to say that anyone who has those things is not a good writer, though, right? There's plenty of writers out there who have a lot of talent, and they've worked very hard to get all their book deals and their movie deals and their whatever other deals. But we do know that there's a lot of writers who don't have that same talent, who have just as much, if not more,
after at that particular moment, and that's not necessarily something that you can control. You know, if you're looking at what is really, really hot at the moment and it's getting all of the big book deals and it's getting the tables and Waterstones and things, and you think, I should write a book about that, by the time you've written that book and got the book deal, it's probably not going to be the big thing anymore. So just don't focus on what other people are doing. What you need to remember is, if you have any kind of book deal, or if you have published a book at all, if you're self-published, whatever, you are doing better than so many people. The fact that you actually decided you wanted to write a book and you did it and you finished it and you got it to a publishable standard is absolutely amazing. The fact that anyone wants to pay money to read your writing is amazing. So don't focus too much on what other people are doing. Focus on you and your journey, and, you know, just making each book that you write better than the last. That's all you can do. Okay, number 6, if you are traditionally published, is that your agent will be your #1 source of support, or at least they should be. I never realised before I got my agent how valuable actually having an agent is. I don't think I could do this without her. I mean, obviously you've got the logistics of, you need an agent to go into traditional publishing, you need an agent to get a book deal, but beyond that, not even thinking about any of that. My agent has been such a source of support to me. Like, I have messaged her before, just sent her like a WhatsApp message, freaking out about something ridiculous, and she's talked me down and she's calmed me and she's reassured me and made me feel just so much better about everything. I think writing in general is quite a lonely endeavour. Like, you're just sat there with your computer and your keyboard, like it's just you and your head. So having sources of support is so valuable, and your agent should 100% be one of those people. And if they're not, if you don't feel like your agent is a big source of support to you, then you need to start questioning why they're not. Don't forget, when it comes to agents, they rely on you doing well. Like, if you don't do well, they don't do well. So it should be a team effort. They should be there holding you up and, you know, making sure that on the days that you're struggling, that they're the person to go to and say, hey, I'm struggling. And you should feel comfortable enough to be able to say that to your agent, and I absolutely do. I'm so grateful for Emily, my agent. Like, I don't know what I'd do without her. Okay, number 7 is kind of related, and it's to find your people. As I said, publishing and writing is very lonely, and you do need those sources of support. I'm very lucky in that I've made quite a lot of author friends, not just since I got a book deal and, you know, I joined the 2022 debut group, which I would absolutely recommend you do. Join a debut group so that you're with people who know what you're going through. But I also did a lot of author reading events before I got my book deal, and I've met a lot of authors through that. And the writing community in general is just the nicest community ever. I feel like social media is quite a toxic place, but when it comes to the writing community, everyone's just so lovely all the time. I did my cover reveal a couple of weeks ago and I was so lucky. I had so many people retweeting and sharing and, you know, just getting everyone hyped up about my book, and it was just amazing. It was so lovely to see all these people who I admire raving about my book and sharing my book and getting excited about my book. It's just the most amazing experience, and honestly the cover reveal day will go down as one of my favourite memories of this whole process. So make connections within the community, talk to other authors, make friends with them. You know, the fact that I've got my lovely mentor Laura North who I can just message whenever I want to and say, hey, I'm feeling down about this, or hey, I'm not sure what to do about this, and she will always reply with the most amazing advice. You know, I've got these other authors who I can, you know, I can be on their podcast, or I can chat to them about anything to do with writing, and it's lovely having these people who understand, because, you know, none of my family write, none of my friends write, so they don't really get the process, they don't really understand it all. So I definitely think when you are writing, whether you're published or you're aspiring to be published, you should find people who you can talk to and just make those connections and friends within the community, because it will be such a source of support for you. Number 8 is that moving goalposts is normal and natural, but try to focus on the moment and live in the moment. I think as authors, we're always moving goalposts. You know, first is I want to write a book, and then it's I want to get an agent, and then when you get an agent you suddenly want a book deal, and when you get a book deal you want your book to do really well, and no matter what you achieve you're always going to want the next best thing. It's very natural, but it kind of goes hand in hand with what I was saying about, you know, comparing yourself to others. You need to focus on what you've already achieved, and, you know, if you have got a book deal.
Yeah, it's very much like, you know, if you're playing a sport, then you want to go to like the NBA finals, let's say, right? You want to win the championship that year. Well, you need to win your games as you go along, right? And those are more clearly defined like goalposts, if you will, right? Like, we won today's game, it was great, I'm so happy, and we're on track to, you know, to be in the NBA finals and blah blah blah, right? Whatever, or be in conference finals first, and so on and so forth. And so, with being an author, there is, like, you know, typing the end for the first time. There is that major goalpost that's pretty clear and evident. But then the goalposts get a little murky, where it's like, okay, I typed the end, now what? Well, now what is you go back through it and you rewrite what you need to make it better, to where it looks closer to one of these that has an actual spine on it and a cover and everything. You rewrite it to where it looks better. But then what? Right? And then what? And then, you know, like she said, you get an agent, and then what? And then you get, you know, a book deal, and then what? And those things kind of keep coming, where it's like, you know, and then what? But a lot of times those goalposts aren't always viewed as a win, right? Getting that 4th or 5th draft done, where it's like, you know, I've given it to beta readers, or I've given it to critique partners or whatever, and I've made more edits to it, it's even stronger now. That feels just kind of like you can just sweep that aside and it's not really that big of a deal. But really, that should be something that you go, you know, I had a win today. I finished that round of edits. Like, the book is edited again. It's even cleaner than it was before. It's stronger than it was before. The character arcs are more defined, all that kind of stuff. So I think that we need to understand what our goalposts are a bit better, and reward ourselves / celebrate those victories when we can, so that way it's not like, you know, yeah, sure, you want your book to sell and do very well, but, you know, a lot of times I've seen a lot of authors who say, you know, my first book didn't do well, or my first book didn't do well until the third book came out, and the third book kind of caught fire, and then people went back obviously to buy the first two, and then my sales, you know, all skyrocket at the same time because people wanted to get the first three books of the series, and so now they're all doing well. But you know, at that, when you first did your first book, it didn't do so well, and that does kind of suck. But just getting that book out there onto the market is a big deal. You know, going through all those hoops, finally having like kind of like actually letting go, right? Like when you first type the end, you're not done, you're not letting go of that yet. You have to do all this other stuff, and now you're finally letting go, and it's like, well, I'm not going to be editing it anymore, I'm not going to be adding to it, I'm not going to be removing anything. It is what it is. It's out there now, and now I'm on to the next project. But before you go on to the next project, you know, really celebrate that it's out there.
If your book is coming out, if it's being published, focus on that. Get excited about that. Try not to think too much into the future about like what could happen afterwards. Focus on the fact that, oh my goodness, I'm in the most amazing situation and I've achieved my dream and this is amazing. Pop that champagne and, you know, throw that party and have that celebration meal and really enjoy the moment, because it is such an achievement and you should be so proud. Okay, number 9, we're nearly done, is writing is the most important thing and everything else is secondary. You know, whether you're thinking about doing an author website or social media or YouTube or whatever it is you want to do, yeah, that's all fine, that's all great, but it's really not important. What is important is writing the book. And if you're wasting time where you could be writing, fiddling about on social media, you've probably not got your priorities straight. You need to be writing. That is the number one most important thing. And finally, just to finish off this advice video, is to take writing advice with a grain of salt. Everyone is going to give you lots and lots of writing advice, and sometimes it can be really helpful, but you've got to remember that everyone has their own process and that what works for one person may not work for you. So take whatever you hear with a grain of salt, figure out what works for you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do pre-order my book. As I said, the links will be down below, and I hope to bring you lots more videos in the coming weeks and months as we lead up to publication day. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, that was a good video, and that last point is very poignant. That, you know, no matter how much I think that, you know, like some pieces of the advice that I give are just like so like duh, like you have to be brain dead not to think this way kind of thing. That's not true. What works for me, what makes me feel like obviously this works, is not always going to work for someone else. So it's not always like that. So yeah, whenever you hear someone saying like you should do this, you should do that, take that with a grain of salt. Understand that maybe you shouldn't do it at all. Maybe you should do it to just a lesser degree than what they're saying. You know, I typically write almost every single day, but I do take some breaks. So usually if I were to tell people like someone asked me like how often should I write, I would usually tell them 5 days a week. If you want to be a full-time author, that is, if you want to be a full-time author, treat it like a full-time job. You know, do it 5 days a week. Even if it's only just for a few hours, like even if you can only squeeze in like 1 or 2 hours a day, you're not actually doing it like a full-time job. But if you treat it like a full-time job and you get that 5 days a week in, I think that really helps with like the mental preparedness, I guess, in a way of like getting you in the mindset for it. But that might not work for you, right? Maybe you should only be doing it 4 or 3 days a week. Maybe you should be doing it all 7, right? You know, whatever my advice is not always going to be the advice to take 100%.